The mystery of prayer, the bridge between the human spirit and the light. Foreword. The silent cry of mankind, the forgotten power of true prayer. Across the ages, a deep, unspoken cry has risen from the heart of humanity, a cry of longing, of weariness, of helplessness before the storms of life. From ancient temples to modern churches, from quiet caves to crowded cities, man has lifted his voice toward the unseen, yearning for help, for peace, for meaning. Yet, though the lips move, and words are spoken, the heavens often seem silent. Many have concluded that God no longer hears. But the light has never ceased to hear, it is man who has forgotten how to speak aright. True prayer, that living bridge between the spirit of man and the will of God, has been buried under centuries of misunderstanding. It has become ritual, formula, or mechanical recitation, rather than the radiant outpouring of the Spirit's deepest vibration. Men have prayed with the mouth, while their hearts remained unlit, and thus their words fell lifeless to the ground. The Grail Message, the light of truth renewed in this age, restores to mankind the lost understanding of prayer. It unveils the immutable law that governs every answer, showing that no sincere call ever perishes unheard, but that the power of response is bound to the nature of the request and the state of the soul that utters it. Prayer is not begging, it is the act of alignment, of the human spirit adjusting itself to the current of divine will. In this alignment lies power, renewal, and liberation. This book therefore arises as a lamp for the earnest seeker, not to introduce new dogma, but to rekindle remembrance of what once was known. That to pray is to live consciously before God. To receive is to become attuned to His laws. And to be answered is to become a vessel through which His light may flow unhindered. When mankind rediscovers the sacred rhythm of true prayer, the cry of the ages shall be stilled, not by silence from above, but by the living answer awakening within. Preface. The cry of the human heart. In every heart there lies a place too deep for words, a wellspring of yearning that reaches beyond the confines of reason. In moments of despair, loss, or awe, this inner spring bursts forth in the silent call men name prayer. No man is too poor or too wise to feel it, whether in the whispered plea of a mother for her child, or the silent surrender of a dying soul seeking peace. Prayer is the natural voice of the spirit remembering its origin. Yet, the tragedy of the age is that this purest act of the human being has become clouded by misunderstanding. Some pray only when pressed by suffering, others as a daily formality. Some doubt whether it makes any difference at all. The world has grown noisy with countless prayers, yet hollow of faith. This book does not seek to instruct in religious rituals or prescribe formulas. It calls instead to awaken understanding, to reveal how the great laws of creation respond to every sincere vibration of the human will. For prayer is not magic, nor is it a device to change divine intent. The will of God is eternal, perfect, unbending, yet filled with infinite love. Prayer is the act by which man, through purity and humility, steps into that will and allows it to transform him and his circumstances. Thus, every true prayer is answered, but often not as men expect, rather as their spirit needs. This book, therefore, is a guide for those who would rise from the dust of mechanical words to the living experience of communion, for those who long not merely to be heard, but to hear the answer within themselves. Introduction. What prayer truly is. Prayer is not the invention of religion. It is the oldest expression of consciousness, the eternal movement of the spirit toward its source. Even before man could speak, before temples or altars were built, the upward yearning of the soul toward the light was already there. In its truest form, prayer is a natural law, the law of spiritual resonance in motion. Every genuine longing of the soul sends forth a fine material vibration which rises through the spheres of existence, seeking its corresponding harmony. When this vibration meets a kindred current from the light, it returns strengthened, fulfilled, and transformed into visible form or inner enlightenment. This is the secret of all answered prayer. It is not that God changes His will for the sake of one petitioner, but that man, through his prayer, opens a channel within himself through which the already radiating power of the divine can flow. Where the vessel is pure, the light flows freely. Where it is clouded by fear, vanity, or selfish desire, the current is blocked. Therefore, the difference between the prophet whose prayers move mountains and the man whose prayers fall silent lies not in favoritism, but in the state of their inner being. Prayer, then, is not a request sent outward, it is a connection awakened inward. It is the conscious act of aligning the small human will with the great will of God. When man understands this, he no longer prays to compel or to convince heaven, but to become transparent to its working. His words cease to be petitions and become participation, his heart no longer a beggar's cup, but a vessel of light ready to receive and radiate the power that has never ceased to stream down upon all creation. In this understanding begins the true path of prayer. Chapter 1. The law behind every answer, prayer in the living will of God. Every event in the universe, from the movement of stars to the beating of a human heart, unfolds under unchangeable divine laws. These laws are the visible expression of the will of God. Therefore, no prayer, however fervent, can work outside these laws. It can only become effective when it harmonizes within them. This is the first truth mankind must recognize: God does not act arbitrarily. To imagine that he hears one man and ignores another out of preference is to mistake him for a human ruler. In reality, his power flows equally to all, but only those who stand in the right condition receive its effect. As light passes through a window, so does the divine power pass through the soul. If the glass is clear, the room is illuminated; if clouded, the light is dimmed. The law of reciprocal action, the law that, what one sows, he reaps, also governs prayer. Every thought and emotion sent forth returns to its source multiplied by its own nature. Thus, when a man prays with faith, humility, and love, he sends out luminous threads that ascend and attract kindred power from above. When he prays in fear, anger, or selfishness, the threads fall back heavy, entangled, and fruitless. It is not that God refuses him, it is that he has spoken in a language heaven cannot receive. For prayer is not sound alone, it is vibration. And every vibration seeks its like. Only that which harmonizes with the will of God can rise to the spheres of light where answers are born. To live in harmony with these laws, then, is to dwell in an atmosphere where every word and thought becomes a prayer, where even silence itself carries the fragrance of faith and gratitude. Such a soul does not struggle to be heard, for he already lives within the hearing. His life itself is the answer. Chapter 2. The mechanism of prayer, from thought to fulfillment. When a man prays, something living proceeds from him. Each word, each thought, each emotion condenses into a fine material form, invisible to physical eyes but real in the world of substance that lies beyond matter. These forms are built from the radiations of his volition, the true essence of his will. They rise or fall according to their weight. Pure and luminous thoughts ascend swiftly, drawn by currents of similar nature. Impure or confused ones linger in the lower regions, where they are lost among the murky vibrations of human desire. In this way, the mechanism of prayer is not mystical but lawful. The entire creation is woven of living radiation. Within this web, every human prayer sets a current into motion. According to the quality of this current, its purity, strength, and direction, it connects with forces that either lift it upward or keep it earthbound. If the thought form is strong, unselfish, and in harmony with truth, it pierces through the fine material layers and reaches the luminous spheres where beings of light, in service to the divine will, take it up and guide its fulfillment along lawful paths back into the earthly realm. But if the prayer is born of vanity, hatred, or complaint, it lacks buoyancy. It cannot rise. It circles within the lower regions, attracting similar dark forms, which may even burden the petitioner further. Herein lies the explanation of why many prayers seem unanswered. It is not because the power is absent, but because the current was wrongly directed. Therefore, man must learn to pray with his spirit, not merely with his intellect or tongue. He must let go of fear and rest in the quiet assurance that the living law will respond unfailingly to whatever he radiates. When thought and feeling become pure instruments of truth, the mechanism of prayer becomes luminous, precise, and beautiful. Then miracles, which are nothing but natural workings of higher laws, unfold effortlessly. For in the end, every true prayer is simply this: the light within man stretching upward toward the greater light above, and finding itself at home. Chapter 3. The Human Element, the Power of the Inner Will. Every prayer begins not with words but with the stirring of the will. It is the will that gives birth to thought, and thought gives shape to the word. The will is the true essence of man's spirit, the center of all his volition and the force that determines the direction of his soul. In the act of prayer, this inner will becomes the seat of power. When it is pure, humble, and luminous, it radiates upward like a spark seeking its home in the flame. When it is selfish, fearful, or doubting, it sinks downward and is lost among the dense currents of human desire. The will is the hidden engine of destiny. Every prayer is, in truth, the sending forth of one's will into the living currents of creation. If the will is directed toward harmony with the light, the prayer becomes a bridge through which divine power flows. But if it resists the light through arrogance, impatience, or untruth, the bridge collapses before it is built. Thus, the power of prayer depends not on eloquence or ritual, but on the inner condition of the will. A man who kneels in silence but whose heart burns with trust may reach the heights more swiftly than one who speaks 1,000 words without inner conviction. For it is not the lips that move heaven, but the vibration of the spirit aligned with truth. The Grail Message reveals that the human will is a creative power. Every act of will sets a current in motion within the living fabric of creation. When man learns to will aright, in harmony with the divine laws, his prayers become living deeds. The first step, therefore, is purification of the will. To cast out pride, doubt, and selfish longing, and to let the quiet certainty of faith arise. Then the human element, the will, becomes not an obstacle, but the radiant conductor of divine strength. Prayer then ceases to be an effort, it becomes a living cooperation between the spirit of man and the will of God. Chapter 4. Why many prayers go unanswered. Many complain that God does not hear, that their prayers ascend in vain. They pray for healing and remain sick, for relief and remain burdened, for success and remain poor. Some lose faith entirely, believing heaven to be indifferent or distant. But the truth is otherwise. No sincere call goes unheard. Yet the law that governs the fulfillment of prayer is exact, unbending, and just. The first reason many prayers go unanswered is selfish motive. When man prays only for gain, recognition, or comfort, his prayer lacks the upward vibration that connects to the spheres of light. It carries the heavy scent of ego and falls back upon him unchanged. The second reason is doubt and impatience. He who prays yet secretly wonders, will it really happen? Cancels his own vibration. Faith is the power that keeps the current alive, doubt severs it before it bears fruit. Impatience also obstructs fulfillment, for the divine laws operate in perfect timing. The answer comes when all conditions within and around the petitioner are ripe for its manifestation, not a moment before. The third reason lies in disharmony with divine will. Sometimes what man asks would harm his spirit's development or delay his purification. Out of love, the light withholds what he desires until he is ready to receive it rightly. What man calls unanswered is often mercy in disguise. There are also misdirected prayers, where one prays for things contrary to the laws of life. To ask for another's will to be bent, or for evil to be avenged, is to sow seeds that return as suffering, for the power that answers prayer magnifies whatever it touches. Therefore, man must learn to pray in accordance with the law. Not, my will be done, but, thy will be done through me. Then even apparent denials become blessings, and every silence of heaven becomes a deeper lesson of trust. For truly, the light answers always, but only in the tongue of eternal wisdom, not in the language of temporal desire. Chapter 5. The Prayer of the Pure Heart, the Living Connection. The pure heart is the most powerful altar upon earth. Wherever purity dwells, the power of the light descends without hindrance. For purity is harmony, and harmony opens the gates between worlds. The prayer of a pure heart does not strain, demand, or argue. It rests quietly in trust, knowing that its vibration already stands in alignment with divine will. In this stillness, prayer becomes not a request, but a communion, a living connection between the human spirit and the light. The words may be few, or even absent altogether, for the power lies not in the speech but in the vibration of love, gratitude, and humility radiating from the soul. Such a heart does not pray only in moments of need. Its very being becomes prayer, each breath, each thought, each deed a continuous offering to the Creator. This is the state of those ancient souls whose presence alone brought peace to others, for they lived in the luminous stream of constant prayer. Their hearts were windows through which the light could shine unhindered into the world. When man purifies his inner life, freeing it from deceit, lust, hatred, and fear, the light begins to circulate through him. His prayers are then answered swiftly, not because he is favored, but because he stands in the natural law of spiritual resonance. The Grail Message reminds us that only purity can bear the power of light. Therefore, to pray effectively, man must become inwardly pure, in thought, word, and deed. Then prayer becomes not an act of pleading but of radiating. Not a cry for help, but a song of unity. And the one who prays thus no longer feels separated from God, for he has become a living connection himself. Chapter 6. The Attitude of the Spirit, Faith, Surrender, and Silence. The attitude of the Spirit is the inner soil in which every prayer takes root. Without the right disposition, even the most beautiful words remain barren seeds. Faith is the first element, not blind belief, but luminous certainty, the quiet knowing that divine power is, and that it responds according to unchanging law. Faith opens the channel, doubt closes it. It is the steadfast gaze of the soul fixed upon the light, unshaken by appearances. Surrender is the second. It is not weakness, but strength in its highest form, the deliberate letting go of self-will and allowing the will of God to work unhindered. It is the calm assurance that whatever comes from the light serves our highest good, even when we do not understand it. Silence is the third. After the outpouring of the heart comes the sacred stillness in which the answer descends. In silence, the Spirit listens. For prayer is not only speaking but receiving. When man prays with faith, surrenders his will, and rests in silence, the soul becomes transparent like clear water, reflecting the radiance of the light. In this state, even a whisper from above resounds like thunder within him. This trinity, faith, surrender, and silence, forms the golden key to communion. It is the attitude of all true servants of the light, who no longer strive to be heard, but to be guided. For the greatest answer to prayer is not always an external event, but the inner awakening that takes place in silence, when the human spirit recognizes that it is never alone, never forgotten, and always within the gaze of divine love. In such moments, prayer becomes worship, and worship becomes life. Chapter 7. The Creative Power of the Word, when the spoken becomes living. In the beginning was the Word. With these eternal words lies the key to both creation and prayer. The Word is not mere sound. It is vibration, living force condensed from the will through thought into audible form. Every spoken word sets into motion energies that weave through the fine material world and return to their source, bringing with them either blessing or burden. When a man prays, therefore, his spoken words are living seeds. They carry within them the essence of his volition. If this essence is pure and harmonized with the light, the words shine with creative power, they become instruments of divine manifestation. But if they are tainted by vanity or fear, they fall lifeless to the ground. The ancients understood this mystery. They guarded sacred names and mantras because they knew that sound, when rightly directed, could awaken spiritual forces. Yet even they erred when they forgot that it is not the word itself, but the purity of the one who speaks it, that determines its effect. The Grail Message reveals anew that every human word participates in creation. When the Spirit prays in truth, its words become luminous forms that rise upward and draw corresponding currents of power. When spoken in gratitude, love, and trust, even the simplest utterance, "Thy will be done," carries the might of worlds. Therefore, let every man watch his speech. Let him speak only what uplifts, blesses, and harmonizes, for in each word lives a seed of destiny. When the spoken becomes living, prayer becomes creation. The soul that prays aright no longer merely asks for change, it creates the condition in which change must occur. Such is the secret power of the living word, the echo of divine speech within the human soul, through which heaven and earth are joined once more. Chapter 8. The Prayer of Thanksgiving, the Forgotten Form. Among all forms of prayer, thanksgiving is the most powerful and the most neglected. Man is quick to ask, but slow to give thanks. Yet gratitude is the breath of the Spirit. It lifts every prayer from the level of petition to the realm of praise, where the light dwells in fullness. When man prays only in need, he binds himself to the realm of want. But when he prays in gratitude, he opens himself to abundance. For the vibration of thanksgiving harmonizes perfectly with the divine laws, drawing new blessings even as it acknowledges those already received. Gratitude is not limited to what the eyes can see or the hands can hold. True thanksgiving springs from the recognition that the Creator is continually sustaining, guiding, and blessing all creation, even in times of hardship and silence. The grateful heart perceives God not only in answered prayers, but in the very process of waiting, learning, and growing. A thankful soul transforms every experience into gain. It sees in trial an opportunity to deepen trust, in disappointment a chance to purify motives, and in loss a reminder that only the eternal has true value. The Grail Message reveals that the spirit which radiates gratitude creates luminous forms in the fine material realms. These forms attract corresponding vibrations of light and joy, enriching not only the one who prays but all who come within his sphere. Thus, thanksgiving is not a mere courtesy, it is a creative act. It renews the bond between the creature and the Creator. Therefore, let man give thanks not only after the harvest, but also while sowing the seed, not only when healed, but even while enduring, not only when understanding, but also when walking in faith. For the prayer of thanksgiving lifts the soul beyond asking, beyond fear, into the serene joy of communion with the living God. Chapter 9. The Right Asking, How to Align Desire with Divine Will. To ask rightly is an art born of understanding. Every desire sent upward in prayer sets a current in motion, but only when that current flows within the channel of the divine will does it lead to blessing. Most men pray from their surface desires, not from their spirit. They ask for things the intellect craves, comfort, position, pleasure, without considering whether these serve the true growth of the soul. Thus their prayers, though earnest, often bring disappointment or unintended consequences. The right asking begins with inner stillness. The spirit must first quiet its restless wishes and listen to the whisper of the light within. Out of that listening arises the pure desire, not for what pleases the moment, but for what fulfills the law of one's being. To ask rightly is to ask in harmony with truth. It means saying, in essence, "Let thy will flow through my will, let me desire only what serves thy purpose in me." Such prayer never fails, for it no longer demands but cooperates with divine order. It releases the personal will and allows the higher will to use it as an instrument. The Grail teaching reminds us that every wish, whether spoken or silent, sets a form in motion. If this form aligns with the luminous currents of creation, it gathers power and returns fulfilled. But if it opposes them, rooted in greed, envy, or fear, it meets resistance and dissolves. Therefore, right asking requires purity of motive and clarity of purpose. The more selfless the petition, the quicker it ascends and draws its fulfillment. Man must learn to ask not, "What do I want?" but, "What does the light will to accomplish through me?" Then desire becomes prayer, prayer becomes alignment, and alignment becomes peace. In such harmony, even unspoken longings are answered, not because God is persuaded, but because man has entered the vibration where the answer already exists. Chapter 10. When Light Descends, the Law of Reciprocal Action in Answered Prayer. Every true prayer sets a law into motion. It rises as a vibration of will, clothed in thought and carried by the word. According to the law of reciprocal action, one of the living laws governing all creation, this vibration must return to its origin, bearing the fruit of its kind. When a prayer is pure and luminous, the returning current brings light, strength, healing, and peace. But if it is impure, fearful, or selfish, it returns burdened and heavy, bringing confusion and stagnation. The light answers each according to its nature, never arbitrarily, but in perfect justice. This explains why some prayers seem to bring sorrow before joy. When the light descends in answer to a call, it illuminates not only the surface but the hidden shadows within the soul. That which is unclean or obstructive is brought to light so it may be dissolved. The process may feel painful, yet it is mercy, for the power that purifies must first expose what hinders fulfillment. Thus, many who pray for peace first experience turmoil. Those who ask for patience encounter delay. Those who seek love are shown their selfishness. The light reveals what must be cleared before the prayer can be fully answered. This is the law of reciprocal action in its higher operation. It does not merely return what was sent but refines, corrects, and elevates it. The Grail Message teaches that the light works through immutable laws, even prayer cannot bypass them. The divine power does not make exceptions, it fulfills the law perfectly. Therefore, man should not be dismayed when answers seem slow or severe, often they are the precise remedies his spirit requires. When light descends, it always blesses. But to receive that blessing, man must endure its brightness, which dispels illusion and demands purification. Thus, answered prayer is not always ease, it is awakening. The light returns to the petitioner in the exact form needed for his upliftment, never less, never more. Chapter 11. The Forms of the Answer, Healing, Strength, and Delay. The answers to prayer take many forms, yet all are governed by one principle. Divine wisdom gives what serves the soul's ripening, not what gratifies its momentary wish. There are three principal forms of answer: healing, strength, and delay. 1. Healing. Sometimes the light answers by removing the condition that burdens the petitioner. Physical healing, reconciliation, or deliverance may come swiftly and visibly. Yet this form of answer occurs only when the inner cause, the wrong attitude or spiritual blockage, has been dissolved through repentance, forgiveness, or inner change. Healing is not magic, it is the natural result of restored harmony between spirit and law. 2. Strength. At other times, the light does not remove the burden but gives the strength to carry it. This form of answer deepens faith and matures the soul. Many of the greatest servants of God were not spared pain, but were inwardly empowered to rise above it. Their suffering became service, their endurance, testimony. Strength is the hidden answer through which the soul learns steadfastness and surrender. 3. Delay. And sometimes, the answer is delayed, not denied. Delay is the tenderest form of mercy, for it allows the soul time to prepare itself to receive rightly. If the gift came too soon, it would be misused or misunderstood. The divine will waits until the inner vessel is ready. In truth, every prayer is answered immediately in the fine material realms. What man calls delay is only the time it takes for conditions on earth to align with the spiritual fulfillment already granted. Therefore, let man not murmur when healing is slow or change unseen. Let him hold fast in faith, purify his motives, and remain steadfast in gratitude. The form of the answer may differ, but the purpose is always the same: to draw the soul nearer to the light. Chapter 12. The Prayer that Transforms, How Answers Change the Inner World First. Every genuine answer to prayer begins within. Before outer circumstances shift, an inner transformation takes place. The heart is softened, perception cleared, and the will attuned to higher vibration. The Grail Message explains that spirit precedes matter. All outward change must first occur inwardly in the finer realms. When man prays sincerely, the light works within him, reshaping thought, feeling, and motive until he becomes capable of receiving the external fulfillment rightly. This is why many answers seem invisible. The divine power first heals the root before touching the branches. The impatient man sees nothing and despairs, the awakened soul perceives the silent unfolding and rejoices. The prayer that transforms does not merely alter events, it awakens consciousness. It teaches man to see as the light sees, to interpret delay as instruction, adversity as purification, and even silence as grace. When the heart is transformed, outer change becomes inevitable, for the law of attraction draws to man what corresponds to his new vibration. He becomes a magnet for harmony, peace, and right opportunity. This is the deepest mystery of prayer, that it is not primarily a means of changing God's mind, but of changing man's inner world until it reflects the divine will. The true answer to every prayer is illumination, the dawning of understanding, the birth of trust, the peace that passes understanding. When man is changed, the world around him changes also. And when the world within him becomes light, every word he speaks, every act he performs, becomes silent prayer fulfilled. Thus, the prayer that transforms is the prayer that redeems. For it restores man to his rightful harmony with the light. Chapter 13. The difference between magic and prayer. The confusion between magic and prayer has endured from ancient times to this very age. Both appear to deal with invisible powers, both seek effects beyond the physical. Yet between them lies an unbridgeable gulf, the gulf between human compulsion and divine cooperation, between willfulness and surrender. Magic attempts to command, prayer aligns. Magic seeks to use power, prayer seeks to serve power. Magic arises from the intellect's desire to control, prayer flows from the spirit's yearning to commune. The magician, whether ancient or modern, tries to bend the laws of creation to his personal will. He studies hidden forces to manipulate them for gain, influence, or protection. He may succeed temporarily, for the fine material worlds are responsive to strong concentration and intent. Yet such manipulation, being self-centered, inevitably draws him into the web of reciprocal action. Every misuse of force demands rebalancing, and the magician becomes ensnared by the very powers he sought to control. True prayer, on the other hand, never commands. It is a reverent petition, conscious that all power belongs to the Creator alone. The one who prays rightly does not seek to compel events but to cooperate with divine law. He speaks not against creation but within it. He says, "Thy will be done," and thereby lifts his will into harmony with the eternal order. Magic, even when disguised as spiritual practice, often springs from pride or fear, the wish to secure results without inner change. Prayer, however, transforms the supplicant first, so that the change in the outer world becomes a reflection of the change within. Thus, while both may appear outwardly similar, words spoken, hands raised, candles lit, the vibration differs completely. Magic is horizontal, moving within the realm of the created to manipulate the created. Prayer is vertical, rising from the creature to the Creator in trust and love. One binds, the other frees. One darkens the soul, the other illumines it. Therefore, let man abandon all attempts to command the unseen, and instead learn to stand still in faith. The prayer that is pure in will and humble in heart opens channels the magician can never touch, for it draws directly from the light. Chapter 14. The Intercessors, when one prays for another. Intercession is among the most beautiful expressions of love in creation, when a soul lifts another before the light. Yet even here, law and purity govern the efficacy of prayer. Many believe they can pray someone into heaven, or force blessings upon another. This is error. No prayer, however fervent, can override the free will or spiritual condition of another human being. The laws of creation protect each soul's responsibility for its own path. When one prays for another, the true effect depends not on emotional pleading but on spiritual radiance. The pure prayer of intercession is like a ray of light directed toward another soul, not to compel, but to illuminate. It strengthens, clarifies, and offers power that the other may choose to accept or reject according to his inner will. The Grail Message explains that such prayer creates luminous forms that travel along the spiritual threads connecting all human spirits. If the one for whom the prayer is made opens his heart, these forms enter his aura and enliven him, bringing peace, healing, and guidance. If he remains closed, they hover near, awaiting readiness. Thus, intercession is never wasted, but neither can it substitute for the inner decision of the one in need. To pray rightly for another is therefore to stand in silent trust, desiring only that the light may reach him according to the divine will. One must resist the urge to dictate what form the answer should take. The prayer of a mother for her wayward son, or a friend for the sick, must not plead, "Do this, O Lord," but rather, "Let thy light work in him for his highest good." In this way, intercession becomes an act of love without attachment, help without interference, and faith without fear. The true intercessor is a channel, not a controller. His task is to radiate light, and trust the law to distribute it where and how it is needed. Chapter 15. The Prayers of Fear, Begging Instead of Trust. Fear disguises itself as piety in many prayers. The lips speak devotion, but the heart trembles in anxiety. This is not communion with God, it is spiritual begging, born of mistrust in the Father's perfect justice. The prayer of fear says, "Protect me lest I perish, give me lest I suffer." The prayer of faith says, "Thy will is my safety, thy purpose is my peace." In the vibration of fear, no prayer can ascend to the realms of light, for fear is heavy and binds the soul to the lower strata. It testifies that man has not recognized the love and justice that govern creation. It implies suspicion toward God, as if he could forget, err, or abandon his child. Fear-based prayers often fill religious gatherings, long cries for protection from devils, curses, or death. Such prayers, though passionate, radiate confusion and attract corresponding currents of unrest. Instead of freeing the spirit, they strengthen the very darkness they seek to flee. The Grail Message teaches that every vibration returns to its source. Fear sent out returns multiplied, intensifying the state of dread within and around the supplicant. Faith sent out returns as strength and serenity. Thus, fear prayers build prisons, while faith prayers open gates. The one who prays rightly understands that safety lies not in exemption from trial, but in alignment with divine law. He knows that nothing can harm him that does not serve his ultimate good. His prayer is therefore calm, simple, and confident. "Father, guide me through thy will, let thy strength be my shelter." When prayer is free of fear, its words shine. They carry assurance, not desperation, gratitude, not grasping. Such prayer no longer pleads for rescue, it recognizes that rescue already exists in obedience to the light. Let every man who prays examine his heart. Does he believe, or does he only hope? Is his prayer trust, or is it fear in disguise? For only when trust replaces dread does prayer regain its true power, the power of harmony with God. Chapter 16. The Prayers of Pride, the Illusion of Superiority Before God. Equally dangerous as fear prayer is pride prayer, the prayer that seeks to exalt the self before God or men. It is the prayer of the Pharisee who thanked heaven that he was not as other men are. Pride prayer arises when religion becomes performance, when the intellect usurps the throne of the Spirit, and when man seeks to impress the Almighty instead of humbling himself before Him. Such prayers may sound eloquent, but they are empty. They reach no higher than the ceiling, for the light cannot penetrate arrogance. The proud soul shuts itself off from grace by assuming it already possesses it. Pride prayers can take many subtle forms. The preacher who prays to display holiness. The scholar who prays to confirm his doctrines. The believer who prays for the downfall of those who disagree. The mystic who prays to feel superior in enlightenment. In all these, the I stands at the center, not God. The Grail Message warns that such misuse of prayer erects a spiritual wall between man and his source. Where humility should be, there is self-importance. Where surrender should dwell, there is self-assertion. True prayer bows in silence before the infinite. It never presumes to know more than the law. It never speaks as if to instruct heaven on justice or timing. It acknowledges, I am nothing without the light. To pray rightly is to stand in awe, not in display, to seek cleansing, not confirmation. The humble heart prays in secret, unseen, and yet its radiance fills the heavens. For humility is transparent to the light, and through such transparency flows blessing for the world. Let man beware of the subtle pride that whispers even in his devotion. For when prayer becomes self-admiration, it loses its wings and sinks back to earth. Only when pride is dissolved in reverent stillness can prayer again ascend as flame. Chapter 17. The False Prophets, Religion, Power, and Control Through Prayer. Through the ages, prayer, the purest gift of the Spirit, has been corrupted into an instrument of control. False prophets, priests, and miracle workers have used it to bind men's souls under fear, dependency, and obedience to themselves rather than to God. They proclaim, "Your prayers will be heard only through us." They sell blessings, offer indulgences, or promise prosperity in exchange for devotion, tithes, or allegiance. Thus they place themselves as mediators, as if the living God were distant and could be persuaded by ritual, money, or rank. But the truth stands eternal. No man can monopolize access to God. Prayer is the direct bond between the human spirit and its Creator. It requires no middleman, no formula, no ritual, only purity, humility, and faith. The false prophets know this, yet they exploit man's fear and ignorance to maintain power. They dramatize prayer, multiply words, and cloak manipulation in religious clothing. Their prayers thunder on stages and echo through amplifiers, but lack the quiet radiance that alone reaches the light. The Grail Message unmasks such deception by reminding humanity that divine power cannot be used, it can only serve where purity permits it. No prayer uttered in vanity or for show can reach the throne of light, it circles back, feeding illusion and darkness. When religion wields prayer as weapon or advertisement, it desecrates the sacred. When leaders exploit faith to control minds, they commit the deepest blasphemy, for they obscure the Father's nearness with the shadow of human ambition. Yet all such misuse has its end. The light withdraws from empty forms, and the time comes when words once mighty fall lifeless, for the spiritual current no longer flows through them. True prayer needs no noise. It may rise from a cottage, a sickbed, or a child's heart, and the whole creation bends to it. Therefore, let every seeker turn inward, beyond the noise of false prophets, and listen for the still voice of the Spirit. There, in the silence of sincerity, the bond with God is restored, free, direct, and radiant. Chapter 18. The Collective Confusion, the Noise of Many Words. In this age, where every voice seeks to be heard, prayer too has become noisy. Many gather in crowds, their voices rising in unison, but their hearts remain far from the source they invoke. The air vibrates with sound, yet heaven is still, untouched by the clamor of lips that move without spirit. Man believes that multitude of words increases the strength of his prayer, that repeated chants, loud shouts, or endless declarations can compel the Almighty to listen. But in truth, such prayers dissipate like mist in the morning sun, for they are formed of the intellect, not born of the Spirit. Prayer is not in the many words, but in the living vibration of the will. It is the silent movement of the soul toward its origin. When man prays from his heart, even one word, uttered in stillness, can reach the throne of God. But when he prays only with his mouth, 10,000 words cannot pierce through the dense clouds of his own confusion. Thus, collective prayers that lack purity only create psychic clouds, a fog of human wishes and anxieties that hover in the lower planes, attracting similar forms of unrest. From such clouds arise mass hysteria, false visions, and religious excitement mistaken for divine presence. True collective prayer arises only when hearts are united in genuine humility, love, and longing for light. Only then does the vibration of a group ascend harmoniously, forming a luminous current that serves as a bridge to the higher spheres. But where ego, show, and noise rule, heaven remains silent. Chapter 19. The Secret of True Communion, the Still Heart Before God. All true prayer begins and ends in stillness. Not the stillness of inactivity, but the sacred calm that comes when the soul bows before the eternal. In that silence, man becomes receptive. The restless thoughts of the brain are hushed. The intellect ceases its ceaseless questioning. The spirit begins to breathe again, drawing from the current of divine life. In still communion, man no longer asks, as one demanding, he listens. He no longer dictates to the Almighty, he receives. In this state, the boundaries between praying and being dissolve, for prayer becomes oneness with the divine vibration. True communion is therefore not achieved through emotional frenzy, but through inner purity, humility, and quiet readiness. It is the spirit's attunement to the will of God. The man who learns to be silent within, even for a moment, will find that heaven begins to speak. The answers he once sought will unfold like dawn within his own soul. Thus, to pray rightly is to become still, not to force one's will, but to align it. Not to demand, but to understand. In this inner peace lies the secret power that transcends all words. For the still heart is the vessel through which the light flows freely into the world. Chapter 20. Faith as Power, the Sword of Trust Against Shadow. Faith is not an opinion nor a mere belief. It is a living power, the sword of light that cuts through shadow. The man of faith does not hope vaguely, he knows. His prayer is not filled with doubt or fear, but with quiet certainty that the will of God is just and good, and that every genuine longing for light is heard. Faith connects the spirit to the current of divine power. When the soul prays with faith, the words are not sent upward as questions, they rise as commands in harmony with the will of God. Faith gives them form, substance, and direction. Doubt, on the other hand, scatters and weakens them. For faith is magnetism, it attracts the currents of fulfillment. Doubt is repulsion, it disperses them. Many pray but are secretly fearful. They believe, yet their belief trembles under trial. Such prayers reach no higher than their fear permits. But the one who trusts, even without knowing the how or when, opens a channel through which divine energy flows unimpeded. Faith, then, is not blind, it is seeing with the Spirit. It is the clear recognition of the unchangeable laws of God at work in every condition. It stands firm, even when outer appearances deny the answer, because it perceives truth beyond form. Faith knows that light always triumphs, and that no prayer uttered in purity is ever lost. Chapter 21. Love is the flame, the highest form of prayer. Love is the breath of the Spirit. It is the fire that makes every prayer living. Without love, prayer is cold and mechanical, a formula of sound without life. But when love burns in the soul, every thought, every sigh, every deed becomes prayer. Love is the highest vibration, the purest resonance with the divine will. For God Himself is love, not sentimental affection, but radiant giving, creative outpouring, eternal service. To pray in love means to align oneself with this movement, to wish good, healing, upliftment, and blessing for all. Such prayer does not seek for self, but for harmony. It does not beg, it blesses. It does not cling, it releases. It is the song of the awakened spirit that lives in gratitude and reverence for the all-good. The one who loves cannot hate, cannot curse, cannot wish harm, for his spirit has become light-bearing. Every vibration of such a soul is an offering before the throne of God. His presence alone becomes a silent prayer that heals and uplifts others. This is the highest form of communion, when man no longer prays consciously, but as prayer. His whole being radiates light, drawing others upward. In this flame, all fear dissolves, all illusion fades, and only the eternal reality of love remains. Chapter 22. The Prayer of Service, Living Prayer Through Deeds. True prayer does not end with words, it continues in action. The one who truly prays must live what he has asked for. For every genuine prayer, once answered, demands fulfillment through the deeds of the one who received it. When man prays for peace, he must become peace. When he prays for healing, he must be a healer. When he prays for light, he must walk in the light, not in contradiction to it. Service is the living continuation of prayer. Through service, the inflow of divine energy finds expression in the world. Every good deed done selflessly, every word spoken in love, every silent act of compassion, these are prayers in motion. The one who serves becomes a vessel through which the will of God manifests. The error of man has been to separate prayer from life, to kneel before God, yet rise to walk contrary to what he prayed for. Such prayers fall back unfulfilled, for they are not rooted in the reality of being. But when life itself becomes prayer, then the circle is complete, heaven and earth are joined, word and deed are one. Thus, the perfect prayer is the life lived in purity, faith, love, and service. It is no longer a request, but a continual thanksgiving, a radiant participation in the harmony of creation. Chapter 23. The Peace of Surrender, when the will becomes one with the divine will. The highest stage of prayer is not petition, nor even thanksgiving, it is surrender. This surrender is not weakness, nor resignation to fate, but the serene harmony that arises when man recognizes the perfection of divine law and willingly aligns himself with it. In surrender, the human will ceases its restless striving and bows joyfully before the higher will that rules all creation. The spirit no longer insists, "Let this be done for me," but instead breathes, "Let thy will unfold through me." It is the transformation of the prayer of need into the prayer of being. Surrender is peace, for where resistance ends, friction ceases. The soul that lives in this peace no longer trembles before the uncertainties of life. It moves trustingly, as a child walks beside the Father, knowing that every path, however steep, leads upward. The storms that once caused fear now purify, the delays that once caused doubt now deepen faith. This surrender brings power, not passivity. For only when man lays down his small, self-centered will does he awaken to the current of the divine will flowing through him. Then every action, every thought, becomes guided from above, effortless, luminous, and fruitful. To surrender thus is to rest in God, and in that rest, one finds the peace that surpasses all understanding, the peace that the world cannot give, nor take away. Chapter 24. The Prayer That Never Fails, Thy Will Be Done. There is only one prayer that never fails, the prayer that echoes the eternal harmony of the universe. Thy will be done. All other prayers are conditional, bound to the limitations of human understanding. We ask for what we think is good, yet often it leads to sorrow. We pray for escape from trials that are meant for growth. We desire what shines outwardly, not perceiving the shadow it may cast upon the soul. But the spirit that prays, "Thy will be done," lifts itself above all such limitations. It aligns with the creative rhythm of life itself, the movement of wisdom, love, and justice that pervades all worlds. Such a prayer does not plead, it cooperates. It does not seek to change the divine plan, it offers itself to fulfill it. This is the prayer of the awakened spirit. It says, yes, to life, to every joy, every pain, every step, knowing that within all lies the guidance of light. When such a prayer is spoken sincerely, heaven and earth unite in that instant. The soul becomes clear, like a crystal through which the rays of God shine unimpeded. The human will, once divided and confused, becomes transparent to the divine. Then, and only then, do all things truly work together for good, because man has ceased to work against the will of God. Thus, the prayer, "Thy will be done," is the highest wisdom and the deepest love. It is the complete trust that transforms prayer into pure worship, where the one who prays and the one prayed to are no longer two, but one in spirit and purpose. Chapter 25. The Radiant Soul, Prayer is a Way of Life. When prayer has ripened into surrender and trust, it ceases to be an act performed at certain times, it becomes a state of being. The spirit that lives in unbroken awareness of God no longer needs to begin prayer, for it is prayer. Every thought is a song of gratitude, every deed a testimony of reverence. Such a soul radiates quiet strength. Wherever it walks, peace follows. The atmosphere around it becomes light-filled, harmonious, and healing. It speaks few words, yet its presence uplifts others. For the spirit that lives in continual prayer has become transparent to the divine current, a lamp through which the eternal flame shines into the world. This is not achieved through external discipline or ritual, but through inner purity. The radiant soul has purified its motives, harmonized its desires, and anchored its consciousness in love. Its joy is to serve, its peace is to give. Every task becomes sacred when done in awareness of the divine presence. Cooking, walking, working, teaching, all can be prayer when done with gratitude and love. The radiant soul has discovered the secret of life, that prayer is not words, but living alignment with God's law. It is the steady light that shines without ceasing, day and night, in joy and in sorrow, in silence and in song. Chapter 26. The Light in Action, the Living Temple Within. Prayer reaches its fulfillment when it becomes light in action, when the divine power that flows through the soul finds expression in life and service. The true temple of prayer is not built of stone, nor enclosed by walls. It is within man, the sanctuary of the Spirit, the holy ground where the light of God meets the willing human will. When man has purified this inner temple, he no longer seeks God outside. He feels His presence within, as the silent flame upon the altar of the heart. Every sincere prayer rekindles this flame, and every good deed feeds its brightness. The Spirit that guards this temple walks in continuous communion, even amid the duties of the day. Such a man becomes a blessing in the world. His words carry weight, his glance uplifts, his silence comforts. He does not merely speak about God, he reveals Him through his life. His actions become sacraments, his love, a prayer in motion. This is the destiny of every soul, to awaken the living temple within, to let the divine light work through its purified vessel, and to bring heaven into earthly expression. When this happens, man becomes a true servant of the light, a conscious participant in the eternal prayer of creation itself. Conclusion. The power within, the answer that has always been near. The great discovery awaiting every human being is this: the power that answers prayer is already within. The divine will flows ceaselessly through creation, waiting only for the open heart and pure intention to become its channel. There is no distance between man and God, only veils of misunderstanding that man himself has woven through ignorance and fear. Prayer is the act of lifting these veils. Each sincere turning toward the light removes one more layer of darkness until the soul perceives clearly. The answer was never absent, only the awareness was. Man has looked outward for miracles, yet the greatest miracle lies within, the awakening of the Spirit, the recognition of the living connection between the human and the divine. Every answered prayer, every healing, every transformation is but a reflection of this eternal truth, that God is nearer to us than our breath, and that His power responds immediately to every vibration of pure longing and love. The true answer to prayer, therefore, is not merely change in outer conditions, but the renewal of the inner being, the transformation of the spirit into a vessel of light, harmony, and peace. Epilogue. The silent temple within, the still heart before God. In the end, all prayer leads to silence, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of fulfillment. Here, words fall away, for they are no longer needed. The soul has entered into rest. It no longer seeks, because it has found. It no longer asks, because it knows. In this silence, man beholds the face of God, not as an image or a thought, but as living presence. It is the stillness of the eternal that fills all worlds, the calm at the heart of all movement, the peace behind all creation. This silent temple is within every man. When the heart becomes pure, it opens its hidden door, and the light floods in. Then prayer and life, will and divine will, become one. The soul stands in quiet radiance before its source, and from this stillness, all power, all wisdom, and all love flow outward into the world. Thus ends the journey, not in sound, but in silence. Not in striving, but in surrender. Not in asking, but in being. And from this holy stillness rises the eternal Amen. The word of completion, the seal of unity. The breath of peace that whispers through all creation. Thy will be done, in heaven, and within me.